Wow. That
That's
was
new.
by
Yeah.
far my favorite. A little
Yeah,
jazz
same.
beat. That was nice. That was
Yeah.
nice. I was sort of sad it was over, and that's obviously more I can say about my
We could
intros.
just have an episode where I replay that 30-second clip for 40 minutes.
I'm fine with that. Whoa. I'm fine with that. Fine with that. That was interesting coming out of the virtual background. Anyways, welcome everyone, and no one that that misses the live stream will know what I'm talking about. So we'll leave that
Oh,
little
spoiler.
teaser
Yeah.
in there. You won't see what's happening to me right now either. So unless you watch the live stream, you have no idea what's happening to me.
That's right.
All right, welcome in everyone to the Unscrupulousness podcast. This is your host Jake Curtis, and with me, as always, is the one and only, the truly great formerly known as.
That's supposed to be a shout out to the late Prince, the owner formerly known as the New Westchester Bumblebees.
That's right. Okay, Keifer Walsh,
Hey.
Dr. Walsh. Happy week 13. This is the moment some of us have been waiting for all season long. We are coming off of a podcast bye, and we have a little bit to catch up on. And really, we're going to dive into playoff scenarios and what week 13 means for the league and in this season. We are starting to get some answers to a season with a lot of questions.
Yeah. We're not even going to waste your time in doing our formal format. We're just going to go right into it and be like, answer the questions of where everybody stands, what they need to do this week. And then we get to start our first ever playoff series.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to it. But before we get started, we need to ask the questions that must be answered. And this one's pretty simple this week. Who will make the playoffs? That's the answer. That's a question that we are certainly going to try to answer for you. We're going to give you scenarios for each team, what each team needs to do, and we'll see if they can do it.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Well, before we get into that question, let's talk about the questions that have been answered. We finally have an answer to the question of who will be the first to make the playoffs, and that, of course, is Tim and I. We are, how do I say it? Legitimately locked. We are really locked.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale from needing to clench versus to clenched, you guys have officially clenched the tightest.
Clenched. Yeah, I'm clenched. Yeah. I'm clenched. There's no letting go of this clench.
No, the rest of us are in that kind of like quivering phase, right?
Yeah, but not quite clenched.
Not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. And Thomas is on the verge of clenching. He is essentially clenched. He is as close.
You could probably still get a finger in there, but it is essentially clenched.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Wait, what are we even talking about?
What were you talking about? No, I'm joking. We were all talking about that. Yeah. Thomas is a virtual lock, and we will go over exactly why that is later in the episode. But and then the exciting thing is essentially one slot remains, and so what the exciting part is, we have one spot, one hole to fill with 5 teams.
Yeah,
that's going to be tight. That's going to be tight. It's going to be messy, and it's going to be tight.
That's right.
All right, this is taking a turn.
That's great. Hey, I got a question for you before we jump into it. Something that we should think about is at some point during the playoffs, we should actually crown some team MVPs. But if I had to just ask you right off the top, who would be your number one 2023 Unscrupulousness fantasy player MVP at this point?
I mean, it's hard not to go RB1, but I mean, I'm such like a criteria focused guy that I would need to like honestly, and maybe it's I think a player to be most valuable It's about where they were selected and the value that they bring. You know what I mean? It's not like valuable as in like, do they help you win the most? But it's your biggest value in the draft. And so like players like David Montgomery come to mind, where no one really preseason. If you listen to any podcast, everyone was talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. Everyone was talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. And so I don't know what Garrett spent on David Montgomery, but I can tell you it wasn't much. And he's been a top 5 running back when healthy. And that might not continue, since when he got hurt, Jahmyr sort of jumped onto the scene. But it's those guys I think about.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill because they're number one at 2 top positions.
Yeah.
And when you can get a wide receiver that scores damn near 30 points every single week, I think that there's true value in that. He's averaged 26 points. That's remarkable for a wide receiver. Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of value in that.
Well, 26 points a game is good enough this season for being number 3 overall in fantasy, number 3 on your team, but you have 1, 2, and 3. So it's literally that I was gonna try to do a little trivia thing and ask you, how many of the top 6 players in fantasy, just points alone, do you think you have on your roster? But I'll just tell you, it's 4. 4 of the top 6. Is that not insane?
That is
and
insane.
I bet if I asked you 4 of the 6,
do you hear the crying in the background that you're trying to like?
And it's probably just sheer surprise at 4 out of 6.
It's actually Thomas. It's Thomas's cries from the United States of America that you're hearing in the background.
Right.
Yeah. Let me mute this. I'm going to give you a second to come up with something to discuss without me for the next, 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. One thing I think it's interesting is, and this is annoying, I don't want to just keep talking about Jake's team, but if you look at total fantasy points scored this year, this far, out of the top 6, 4 unfortunately are on Tim's team, and it's his or on Jake's team, and it's Jalen Hurts, who's QB2, Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, and then actually CeeDee Lamb is number 6 in total points scored. So when Jake comes back on, we'll try to have him guess who the other 2 of the top 6 are, because they are not. I don't even know if they'd be in my top 10 of guessing for points. I think it's pretty interesting. I think another player that I would probably throw out for not quite the MVP, but at a position that I just didn't expect him to produce at this type of level. Perhaps CeeDee Lamb comes to mind, but I would actually say Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's averaged 23 points a game, which is number 3 wide receiver. And he's had 2 games over 40 points. So I was just talking about Keenan Allen's kind of a surprise guy that would come to mind.
No doubt.
But if I had to ask you, okay, so top 6, 4 on your team. So Christian McCaffrey, Jalen Hurts, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. Could you guess who the other 2 out of the top 6 are right now in just total fantasy points scored?
It is so hard because this is why I don't like trading, because again, I have to like look at the whole league. I'm so focused on my team and finding in the waiver wire. Like those are the 2 areas of focus that I have blind spots, and it's bad when it comes around to the next year for drafting. I always have thought this, that like I am so much, it's availability bias. Like I am so much more likely to draft someone that I've had previously than someone who I haven't, because I don't know what they've done. I don't know.
No, I just get, I get last season amnesia every single year. I forget. I'm honestly way better at remembering what happened like 3 or 4 years ago than the previous year.
So I do know this. Josh Allen is up there because he has scored more points than Jalen Hurts. So that one's easy. It's the only player that you've listed out there that isn't number 1, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is the only one on that list that isn't number 1 at his position, right? So that was easy.
And that's why. So that's why.
That's why I know that one. And then I assume. So this is. I assume that it has to be RB2, and I don't know who RB2 is. I don't know.
No,
I don't know. I don't know.
It's Raheem Mostert.
Okay, and that's funny because I should have known that because I was just looking at your roster where Raheem Mostert, the RB2, which I just saw and immediately forgot, is on your bench.
Yeah, he sure is.
He's on your bench.
Yeah,
so explain that.
Well, anything can happen.
Yeah.
If Devin Achan was not playing, then I would certainly start Raheem Mostert because he's probably due for another 30-point game. But Devin Achan is back. I don't know. I currently have both Steelers running backs in my starting lineup, and I don't know if that's going to stay that way in the next 32 hours. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
But I probably, if you gave me a bunch of guesses, I would maybe get it Josh Allen, but I probably would forget Raheem Mostert's RB2 and he's on my roster.
Yeah.
I just think that's what's weird about these fantasy points, total points scored is you forget about some of these people.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no doubt. Okay.
Cool. Let's jump into some playoff talk.
Yeah, let's do it.
Shall we?
Let's do it because this is why everyone's here.
Yeah. This is why the other six people show up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to pull this up. We're going to talk team by team through the different playoff scenarios. It gets a bit messy. It gets a bit wonky, but we tried our best to simplify it. So we talked about how Jake and Tim have clinched. Thomas is virtually clinched. The only way that Thomas misses the playoffs is if he loses. And I kind of took Dan out of this, but he would have to lose and then another team win and outscore him by just an astronomical amount of points, ranging from 276 to 354.
Yep.
So if Sam happened to win and outscore him and almost double the league record, he could make it in. So we're calling Thomas a lock.
Yep.
Moving on. So we talked about 5 teams competing for the 4th slot, which is fun. I'm glad we're in this position. But Dan has the edge because he has the game ahead of Sam, Ned, Garrett, and myself. And he actually also leads the points for. So I have the points for over here off to the side. Yeah. So Dan plays Ned.
Dan has control of his own destiny. All he has to do is win.
That's it. He plays Ned. He is currently not projected to win, but we'll get to that later in the next segment. But that's right. He wins and he's in. Or he can also get in if he he loses. And we'll talk about the points that go into that with his matchup with Ned. And somehow everyone else loses. And that gets complicated because Sam and I play. So obviously someone has to win. I'm told. Someone has to win that game.
If there's a tie.
If there's a tie, that's true.
Right.
Which we've never had before.
Which we didn't include in any of the scenarios for good reason, because we're talking about
it will never happen.
Well, now that we've said that.
If I tie a game, I will consider that a loss, and neither of those teams would deserve to go. Well, how do we tie? Do you have to have tied in? Is the tiebreaker quarterback points still?
Oh man, that's an archaic rule. I don't think it is. I think we changed that bygones ago, but
I hope so.
You would have to. Yeah. So, but I'm just saying. There's a scenario in which everyone loses if you and Sam tie, right? Then he would have the tiebreaker on you with the record, and then he would then there's no tiebreaker. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. There actually is no tiebreaker in these matchups.
Oh man. It's points.
So it's
points forced, right?
For playoffs.
Okay.
But in a matchup, we actually set it at no tiebreakers. It used to be quarterback points for, but we actually set it at no, so you can tie someone. That's scary.
Yeah.
But
it used to be quarterback points. That's ridiculous. Wild. That was wild.
Probably the 3rd most important position in fantasy.
But that's essentially why we did it, because the league was so heavy in running back that and I don't not like that rule.
I think it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's jump into the next one though, so we can start talking the specifics. So 4 teams tied at 5 and 7, a game behind Dan. Sam is about 5.5 points behind Dan, but Ned, Garrett, and myself are all within all within 18-ish points of each other. So it makes it interesting. Sam plays me. So in order for Sam to get that last spot, he would have to beat me. Plus, he would need a Dan loss and to outscore him by 5 points.
6.
So that's actually doable.
Essentially 6 points. Essentially 5.9. 6 points.
Yeah. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's go 6. So that's so far doable.
Because listen, if he beats Dan by 5 points, he is not in the playoffs. It has to be 6.
Correct.
It has to be 6.
And 5.9 even.
Well, that would be a tie.
Right, that's true. Then what happens?
Is it kicker points?
Then I bet does it go to head to head?
I don't know.
It'll never happen until it happens.
Yeah, that's right. And then we will the league will just fall apart.
Yes. I think that means that the world stops spinning.
Correct.
So far this is doable, right?
Yeah.
Plus the third factor, he would need Ned to lose. However, that's actually not true because then Ned would lose to Dan, so Dan would win. So I'm taking that out. So
this stuff's complicated. It's complicated.
God.
Yeah.
Okay. So recapping: win, Dan lost, and outscore him by 6. The third factor, he cannot let Ned outscore him by 60 points.
Okay.
So that's doable as well.
It is.
Plus, and now we're getting difficult. Garrett would also have to lose, or Garrett can win but can't outscore him by 61 points. So when it comes to an addition of weird scenarios, it's actually pretty reasonable. And you'll see the next 3 just get even more crazy.
Yeah.
So just put simply, beat me, let Dan lose, and then just don't let Ned and Garrett have crazy games where they outscore him by 60-something points.
Yeah, now Nair is that's a whole different. I don't want another scenario for Nair because once
Nair, if you Nair it,
once
you Nair it, it takes a while for the hair to grow back.
Man,
oh my God. Points to add about Sam?
Have you ever used Nair?
I've never used Nair.
It is an interesting experience. Let me tell you.
I've been at many a sleepover where Nair happened.
Where someone was narrated?
Someone woke up Nair. Yeah.
Oh, and I think that the sleepover illustration is a perfect one because it is an interesting phenomena where you're pulling your hair out and you don't feel it. Like you're literally pulling your hair out of your body and it feels like nothing. And so I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's a weird sensation to pull out hair and not feel anything. But obviously if you can Nair someone while they're asleep and them not wake up, then that proves the point that something. I would like to know the science behind how that just unlocks those hair pores or whatever they are to just release hair like that.
Yeah, I'm learning way more than I ever thought, and I'm learning about it. The active ingredients in Nair are twofold: potassium thioglycolate and calcium hydroxide. And I think what it does is it literally just by virtue of chemicals deadens the sensation around the base of the hair fiber.
Yeah.
I recommend this. If Sam happens to make it into the playoffs, I think Ned and Garrett both have to Nair it.
Yeah, I think so. We'll try to get that written in a contract of some sort, but there's no what I don't understand through that. There's no pull. It's not like there's no resistance where, if I pull my hair right now, it's going to stop. Like it's not going to let me, I have to yank it out. But with Nair, you just pull it out. And so like, I get that it takes the pain sensation away, but how does it like release the hair?
So here's some information. This is interesting.
Uh-huh.
So chemical hair removers like Nair work by targeting the hair structure. Each hair is made by protein fibers called keratin. The
Right.
keratin fibers are twisted together and held by chemical bonds.
Tell us
So the
something.
chemicals in Nair also depilitarizes, that's a word apparently, or weakens the bonds.
Yeah, yeah.
So it basically just untethers the keratin, the disulfide bonds between the keratin fibers.
Right. Now that makes more sense.
That's incredibly way more sophisticated than I thought Nair would be.
Oh yeah. I mean, I knew something had to be sophisticated for that to happen. It's quite an experience. I think everyone should Nair themselves at some point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yep. All right.
Well, you can't say we didn't try to teach you something in this episode.
You definitely came away with something. You might not understand the playoff scenarios, but you do know the active ingredients of Nair and how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to Sam?
Nothing that you want me to add to Sam. No, Sam. Listen, Sam is 6 points behind Dan, and that's the closest. He certainly has the best chances there. Everyone after Sam, and we'll get into this, is in the 65 to. I mean, Ned and Garrett are they are separated. Points force is separated less than a point, and so they're virtually in the same boat. Points scored, and then you're 83 points back. So there's a 65 to 83 range that Ned, Garrett, and Keifer are in. But obviously Sam is the closest in striking distance with only 6 points. So I just, again, continue to give context to what you're saying here as you move forward.
Yeah. Once you hit that 60, the 60 threshold is doable, but very difficult. And then 83. And then once you get to the next, I mean, 83 by any single margin is somebody's better or best game and somebody's worst game, essentially.
Yeah, it's a lot like these 2-week playoff matchups, where if you're down 60 points, you're pretty much toast. You're really hoping for a miracle at that point.
Right, it's true. Speaking of, so Ned and Garrett are similar, but Ned, like I said, plays Dan, so it simplifies things. So here's Ned's scenario and path to the playoffs. Ned has to beat Dan, but also outscore him by about 65 points. Yeah. If he does that, he also needs either Sam and Garrett to both lose their matchups, or he can have them win, but he needs to outscore Sam by 60. Yep. That's a big task.
That's a big task.
So really Ned is cheering for. Oh, and then he needs Garrett to lose, or he just needs to outscore Garrett by 1 point. Again, pretty doable. Yeah. So really, for Ned this weekend,
he needs to win.
Beat Dan. He wants me exactly. So he needs to win, beat Dan big, and then he really wants me to win and just Garrett to have an okay week.
But if you win, he still has to outscore you. Well, he can't lose to you by more than 20 points.
Yeah.
So he's rooting for you, but not that hard.
Yeah. He's like, well,
yeah. I hope you win, but don't win by too much.
Yeah, don't do too well.
Yeah.
So on the realm of possibilities, the biggest hurdle to jump is that he's got to beat Dan by 65 points. But in a scenario where, I mean, let's say Dan scores 190 points or 185 points this week, literally anything is on the table.
And he's done that before.
He has done that before.
And he is projected to score, folks, 217 points.
Yes.
So this scenario is not that crazy. He is within striking distance with his total projected right now. He got 4.5 out of the linebacker position with Jordan Brooks leaving the game early. And he got 2.5 from Micah the Lion Parsons. I mean, I don't want to say that it's a sure deal because it's only 2 players, but good Lord, what a start for the rest of the league. Dan is the linchpin. The whole league's waiting for Dan to lose to see what could happen.
Right. If they gave out points for IDPs in the backfield, Micah Parsons would have probably had 20 points.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hopefully, as a Cowboys fan, the league allows for pressures. He's leading the league in QB pressures by like a wide margin, but he's like tied for 6th in sacks. So, anyways,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Ned in a nutshell. Garrett. So similar scenarios. However, he plays you this week. So he needs to win, hands down. He needs Ned to actually beat Dan. That would be helpful. And if he does that, kind of like what I just said about Ned, if Ned wins, great. He just needs to outscore Ned by 1 point, doable. But then in that loss for Dan, he needs to outscore Dan by about 66 points. All of that happens, comes to our game, right? So if Sam ends up winning that, Garrett's got to outscore him by 61 points. Or if I end up winning it, he just has to hope that I don't outscore him by 16 points.
Gosh.
17 points. Isn't this crazy?
It is crazy. It is crazy. It is crazy. And I wonder how many owners have figured this out on their own, or if they don't care and just letting it happen and seeing. That might be a good poll question for the group. How well do you know your playoff scenario right now?
And if we don't get a response, then we are counting you for option B, where you have not thought about it.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we'll wrap it up here with mine. My situation being the most dismal, being 8 of 8 here. So I play Sam. Obviously, I got to beat Sam. And in beating him, I also I just need to beat him. But I also need Dan to lose, and I got to outscore Dan by 83. But if Ned wins, I can't. I got to outscore him by 18. Or I need. I guess if Ned loses, then Dan's in. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that out. Jeez, outscore. If Dan wins that one, then that's it. But outscores Ned by 18 points in that one. But I also need Garrett to either lose or to you. I just need Garrett to win, but I got to outscore him by 17. So lots of hard things, but the tallest mountain to climb here is Dan losing, and I got to beat him by 83. So in this scenario where somehow Dan scores 190 points, I got to score 273 points. So that's tough. That's tough. So interesting. We'll we'll screenshot this guy, and Sunday,
I think
I'm going to use this as my user's guide to watching the Sunday
cheat sheet.
games. Yeah,
that's great. We'll screenshot that, send it out to the league after we ask everybody what they know, and then we'll see if we've made any errors, or if that's what indeed the owners thought of their scenario. Yeah. So now we wanted to do that first before we jumped into the week ahead, the preview, because we wanted some context to know exactly what would happen if those scenarios happen, or if teams win. So we're going to jump into the matchups this week, and the first one is Jake and Garrett. Garrett and I. I'm 8-4. Garrett 5-7. I think that I am okay. Yeah. So I'm 10-2 against Garrett this season.
Wow.
Okay. 10-2. I beat Garrett 10 times and lost to him only twice. Okay. That sounds great. Problem with that being is those 2 losses have happened in the last 4 weeks. I am 2-2 against Garrett in the last 4 weeks. So, and it's not surprising to anyone, any fan of the pod, to hear that, because they know that the infamous trade happened 4 weeks ago, and that's when the flat tire on my team happened, and I've become extremely beatable without George Kittle and Roquan Smith and Ramondre Stevenson in my lineup. So I got Garrett winning this matchup. He's hot. Garrett's hot. And I've been terribly inconsistent. So that's who I've got.
So you had a pretty nice little start there. CD was projected to have 22 points. He ended up having 36. This ridiculous kicker of yours, he hasn't missed a field goal yet. Is that accurate?
That is true. He has not
Brandon
missed
Aubrey?
a field goal. He's missed, I think, 2 extra points this season, but he has not missed a single field goal in his NFL career.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I drafted him, and ESPN did not have his picture until I think like week 5.
Right. I was going to say I didn't recognize him. And that's because that's his
and
picture.
Again, he didn't play college football. He played soccer in Notre Dame, and then he played in the USFL. Yeah, that's right. So everyone knows the story now. But I mean, I didn't know. We were just hoping that we would trade or sign a veteran. Robbie Gould is still a free agent. You know, we just thought certainly the Cowboys are going to do something. And then when they didn't, I was like, well, I might as well have the Cowboys kicker, regardless of the fact that I know nothing about him. And that's worked out. It's worked out
pretty well. I think so. You're off to a good start. Garrett looks like he's got some pretty favorable matchups here. I'm going to pick you in this game, and that's just because that's the outcome that I have to have happen.
Yeah, you need that.
I need it. And you also, you have Anzalone in your starting lineup, and it actually looks like he's doubtful. So make sure you get a linebacker in there, please, for me.
Yeah, I might have been making some waiver transactions during the episode. So we'll see if those go through at 8 p.m. local time.
Good. So we'll see. It's going to come down to that Chiefs at Lambeau matchup with Mahomes and Pacheco there. Can't wait for that. I'm going to be cheering for that for a couple reasons now. But it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a good one. Certainly this one doesn't matter as much for you. Certainly, I guess 1 versus 2 seed, maybe you care about that.
I do want to talk. I do want to spend a little bit of time to talk about those scenarios. We can do that after the week ahead, but
okay.
I do want to wrap our heads around that because obviously that's important.
Yeah.
As we have 5 teams fighting for that number 4 slot, I think it's fair to say that Tom, Tim, and Jake would love to be in that number 1 slot.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Unless it's Garrett. Garrett's hot.
Unless it's Garrett. That's true.
No one wants to face Garrett right now.
No, I certainly don't. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Certainly we know what to expect from your team. Looks like you're going to be rolling with Derrick Henry. I'm proud of you for that. He did have a rebound game last week, but
I don't have a choice. Aaron Jones again out. So I got.
That's true. He was declared out. That's a bummer.
So no choice there.
And it looks like Garrett, pretty healthy. He's got his choice of running backs. Look at his healthy running backs. Pollard, Kamara, Pacheco. And then if he wanted to, he could start David Montgomery and A.J. Dillon, who's an RB1 this week. God, must be nice.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Obviously, the stats are a little bit wobbly with David Montgomery, but he's averaging almost 25 points a game, and he's on the bench. So pretty crazy. And he did score 18 in week 2, but outside of that, the game he got injured, his lowest, his floor is 22. And even if we wanted to count week 2, his floor is 18.
Yeah.
But the ceiling 31, 46, like David Montgomery's been a beast. I would start him over Pacheco, but that's just me. That's me.
Yeah, I would think about it, but Packers' run defense is traditionally not very good, but also
been better as of late.
Great. It has been better as of late. I will not be surprised if Patrick Mahomes throws a couple picks in this game. I'll tell you why. One, he's been thrown quite a few this year, but Packers are getting Jair Alexander back, so their secondary is actually pretty decent. But so we'll see. Maybe we'll do you some favors there. Okay. Shall we move
next
on
matchup?
To the next matchup? Who's that? Is
that's
me?
Ned and Dan. We're going in the order in which the web page has given us. Ned 5-7 at Dan 6-6. This is the linchpin matchup. This might be the matchup of the week because it really should be the game of the week because everybody is going to be watching this game. This game holds the key. Dan wins, it's done.
Yeah,
it's done. So everyone under Tom is going to be, well, under Dan, I should say, is going to be rooting for Ned in this matchup, but obviously not too hard because they want to be able to outscore Ned to secure their position in the playoffs.
Agreed.
Now, I just quick analysis here. Let me cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
I think the linchpin to this game, say linchpin a lot, but I think the crux of this game, the linchpin award goes to Devin Achan.
Yes,
Achan is the linchpin here because he is projected. I mean, we've talked about this. Dan's projected 217. It's not looking good, right? And so he needs someone to score 50. And if there's anyone in this league capable of scoring 50 points right now, it's Devin Achan. Yeah, I mean his wide receivers. Oh my gosh, it's bad, guys.
He's starting Rashee Rice, right? Puka Nacua, who's not incredibly healthy. His tight end too. I've never heard of this guy, Tanner Hudson. I think I know a guy named Tanner Hudson, but he doesn't play in the NFL.
I think we all know a Tanner Hudson,
right? But look at why he's got Saquon out, he's got Hawkinson out, and he's got DJ Moore out, all on buys. Dalton Kincaid on bye.
Kincaid, Keaton Mitchell. I didn't realize the buys, and I was going to say, well, look, it's pretty even though, because if you take a look at Ned's roster, Alexander Madison, Patrick McQueen, James Cook, Roquan Smith, Joshua Dobbs. Yeah. That's not. I mean, so that's even. The other thing I was going to bring up with Garrett and I's matchup, I have a lot of buys. He has none. So that certainly helps Garrett in this week in which he's going to need a win. But this matchup, there's a lot of buys, but I think it's pretty even.
Yes, agreed. I think they're equally impacted, but I am going to say this for Dan, as much as we've been down on him, not having Devin Achan and Justin Jefferson for virtually the entire season. We wouldn't be having this. We would have been done with this episode by now because of these scenarios. If Dan was in a position where he had the best receiver and possibly a top 10 running back, I'm curious about Devin Achan because they shut him down last week, pretty much just to make sure he stayed healthy. And he has no injury designation, and this is why I'm not starting Raheem Mostert probably. And I think they really want to lean on him in that backfield and see how much he can do against the Commanders. But man, and Taysom Hill, I'm just looking at this. This is an interesting group of people.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. How many Mormons does Dan have in his starting lineup?
Based on pictures alone,
Trevor.
Right. I mean, honestly, Brock.
Duh. Taysom, Tanner. Come on, Aiden. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? He's got. Oh my God. Well, Cameron. I don't know. Cameron could be atheist. Could be.
One thing we should mention. I think Dan's best player.
I think I know what you're going.
You know where I'm going with this. Dan's best player this year.
The non-Mormon, not a Mormon.
Probably non-Mormon, and one that I'm going to put up there for an possible MVP. Definitely a special teams MVP. I would like to throw my punter in, but I would also put in Younghoe Koo because Younghoe Koo is now officially the most accurate NFL kicker in history. He's 90% accurate, edging out my guy, Justin Tucker. Yeah. Yep. Who's at 89.9%.
Yeah. And if only the Falcons could get in the red zone and not score touchdowns more often, because he is incredibly efficient. He is not incredibly prolific because he's averaging 8.5 points a game. So, yeah.
He's only kicked 3 field goals past 50 yards this year. And he's never had a game. This is kind of interesting. He's never had a game where he kicked more than one 40-plus yard field goal. I guess I take that back because he had a couple 50s. But you're right. The point remains that he's not like blowing us out of the water.
Points. No, he's just accurate. He's accurate.
He's just accurate. Yeah, he's just drilling it.
Which is helpful. But, I mean, so how many more kicks? Because I think that's a minimum of 100. So how many kicks has Brandon Audrey made? Aubrey. I don't even know his name. Brandon Aubrey.
It's Brandon Aubrey.
How many kicks has he kicked?
He's 26 for 26.
Okay, so he just needs to kick 74 more, and he'll be 100%. Yeah.
Right.
It can happen.
He'll get the yips one of these years.
Oh man, it'll be in the playoffs, just like Brett Maher did last year.
That's true. Let's see. Only other things to add to this. We talked about Dan. We'll talk about Ned. He's starting Brian Robinson. Good on him. That kid has been waiting to get a start.
Oh man, he's got to be so excited.
But he doesn't have much of a choice. I will tell you the one thing that's surprising about Ned. And it's probably just because he's got Kittle and Trey McBride, former CSU Ram, who's now the legitimate tight end 1 in Arizona. He's not starting Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah.
And Pat Freiermuth had 21 points last week.
Wow. I did not know that.
Isn't that crazy? He had 9 catches for 120 yards or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. 9 for 120, 11 targets. Good Lord. But I mean, that's, I wouldn't start him with Trey McBride and George Kittle.
I probably wouldn't either. I'd consider it over Trey McBride, but
dude, McBride's been a stud.
He has been a stud. Yeah.
I tried to trade for him, and the only reason I didn't, week 14 bye.
Oh yeah.
Don't want anything to do with it.
That's terrible. We got to do something. They've got to do something about these buys, these late season buys.
Yeah. My QB2 also has a bye next week, so I'm not looking forward to that, but that's why I didn't trade away Tua. So we'll see. Let's move on. We got you and Sam as the next matchup. The 2, 5, and 7 teams go. So we've been through the scenarios. Now let's look at the projected. ESPN has Sam out in front, 254 to Keifer's 235.
Yeah. Let's talk about Sam's team first.
Okay.
We've talked about this already in the episode, but Sam has the best quote unquote outside shot at taking that fourth spot away from Dan. So what does he need to do? He needs to let me look back. He needs to win. He needs Dan to lose and to outscore him by 6. And then Ned can't win and outscore him by 60. So we looked at Ned. We know how he's pretty decimated by buys, and he's going to have a solid week, but I don't know if he's got like a 300 burger in him. But if he does, is Sam going to be able to put up enough points to ward that off? And he's got some decent matchups. He's starting Baker Mayfield. I think that's interesting. Kyler at the Steelers. I heard this stat. Kyler is averaging, I think it's 9.2 yards a carry when he scrambles outside the pocket.
Yeah, that's wild.
He's almost averaging a first down.
Yeah, it's wild.
He's got Eckler against the Patriots. I think that's a good matchup. Cooper Kupp, hopefully he's healthy.
My gosh. Did you see Eckler play last week? There was this run. It was like 30 yards, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, who is that? Like, was that Joshua Kelly or was that Austin Eckler? Like, this guy is toast, like Dunzo." Yeah. It was sad. It was sad to watch. But I mean, his yards per carry has been mediocre this season. 3.8 yards a carry. That is below league average for Austin Eckler. Yikes.
Yeah, he is not the same guy he used to be. And I don't know if it's health or just age, like if he's dealing with something acutely, but or all just the muscle that he's got.
Yeah, just carrying that heavy load on a small frame.
Yeah.
Could be it. Other things to note, Lamar Jackson on bye, Zay Flowers on bye, Deontay Foreman on bye, Isaiah Likely on bye, DK Metcalf on his bench.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that last
So
night.
career game from DK Metcalf.
37 points.
37
3
points.
touchdowns, 134 yards
Yeah.
and 3 touchdowns. It was
Yeah,
crazy
not
game
because he
last
was
night.
catching a lot of balls, but every other catch was a touchdown.
Yeah, and it's because Deron Bland was on him, unfortunately, and got
which
roasted.
is crazy because I sent a buddy of mine. We're talking about Deron Bland, and we were honestly wondering, how is he in coverage? Is he just the ball hawk like Stephon Diggs? And the numbers before, let me find this real quick. The numbers before last night, right? The numbers that Deron Bland posted before the Seahawks game. Quarterbacks were posting a 36.9 passer rating when targeting Bland. So this PFF person said, passes that have gone in Bland's direction have yielded a passer rating 3 points worse than just throwing the ball at the ground 59 times.
Huh.
Before week 12 or through week 12, before week 13, Bland's coverage grade from PFF, 91.2 was the highest coverage grade of all corners. So, and then he gets absolutely just abused time and time again against the Seahawks. That to me is very strange.
Yeah, it is.
Scored 14 and a half points for Ned.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I don't know how long Ned's had him, but if he's had him in his lineup and been playing him
last 6
with
weeks,
all these touchdowns, probably one of his best players. They did show Dan Orlovsky was looking at, he posted something on Twitter about last night, Dallas with motion. When Seattle used motion, there was like nobody, and this is so weird because Dan Quinn is such a hard-edged defensive coordinator, but every time Seattle went in motion, like nobody picked up the motion receiver, and they were like getting away with these throwing it to the flats and getting like 13 yards.
Wow.
Which is just, I think, I don't know, maybe they took advantage of that a lot, but
anyway. It seemed like anytime they needed a first down, they could get one. Like their third down conversion rate had to have been.
Yeah.
Now they did have to go for it on fourth down a handful of times, and they were unsuccessful every time, I believe. But third down, they really had their way with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Sam.
Yeah, that's Sam. Both teams here are hit by buys very hard. Certainly, you are losing out on all your Vikings, Max Crosby, your kicker.
Jonathan Taylor had thumb surgery. That's my biggest one. But yeah, Justin Fields. I also had to drop 2 starters because I just don't have enough players left with all these buys. And not even just to like save face to be self-deprecating, but I'm going to do terrible this week because of all the reasons we mentioned. But I'm starting Jake Browning at quarterback. I'm in this gross running back dilemma. I kind of ran out of receivers, even though I have decent ones. But man, Adam Thielen got like 2 targets last week, and then I had to do a ton of just not fun defense shuffling. I think my best player might be my punter, who had 12 points last week and 15 points a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
It's going to be a rough week for me unless, something crazy happens. But I will be watching the Packers this weekend and cheering for them more than my fantasy team, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right.
It won't go down without a fight.
Yeah. Looking forward to that matchup. The last one we got is Brother Bowl. Absolutely inconsequential unless we look at, and this might be a good time to do so, the top of the board, the section of the playoff bracket that we have not yet looked at, and that's the winners bracket. That is the top seeds. We haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about them. We could easily, it's going to be Tim or I in first. That's right, because we're tied 8-4. No, right? No one's going to get to 7-5. Is that correct?
That is. So you guys, sorry, hold on. My
8-5.
Here. Nobody will get to 8 wins. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So it will be either Tim or I in first place, and that will be determined by whoever wins and points forced. And if I can get to the chart, I have a healthy margin on?
Yeah, 151 points.
Okay. So virtually lock there if we end up tying. But if Thomas beats Tim and I beat Garrett, then I'm locked into the first spot. If I lose to Garrett and Tim beats Tom, he is the number 1 seed.
Right.
And then it gets a little bit more confusing with Tom, but go ahead.
It does. Well, quickly off the top, I'm going to say just for their matchup, it looks like Thomas is going to have a pretty solid game. He is hit by buys for a couple of players, like Josh Allen's on a buy, Gabe Davis, if he was going to start him, Devontae Adams is on a buy, but he's projected to score 260-something points. He's got pretty good matchups. On the other hand, Tim, if he was looking to have an insanely good week, he looks like he's going to have a solid week. He wasn't really impacted a whole lot by his biggest one's Josh Jacobs and a couple linebackers, but he's probably not going to have that like 330-point week where if you had a 180-point week and this weird 150-point flip happened. I don't think he's going to put it up. So I'll continue. Yeah. That's all I want to say about the matchup.
No. Thank you for that. The other thing, Daniel Hunter, I never know how to pronounce his first name, but I did. Daniil, thank you. He is also on bye, and I didn't want that to go unsaid because the man is averaging a healthy 11.5 points at defensive end. So another hit to Thomas, but this is why I thought Thomas was the best team and why I said it after the draft and why I said it through 12 weeks. His depth allows him to have a very healthy matchup, very healthy team, even when his top players are out. And I think that will continue to serve him well here. I've got Thomas beating Tim, who has changed his name for the second time. We have had 3 team names from Tim this season through 13 weeks. We have had 3 team names.
What is that? It's a league record, but he is averaging 4.3 games per name.
Yeah, there you go. And so, first of all, that's a fascinating stat there. I want to know, A, is it legal? Oh. B, if he wins, which team name do we put on the trophy? Like who won this year, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Happy endings, healthy Chubb, or
Achilles heel.
Achilles heel. He had Achilles heel for like a week, 2.
Well, I want to throw out that 2 of them are just grossly inappropriate. I guess I don't get this one. I don't know.
I don't either.
Who is that?
Who is that? Is that Chubb?
Brad. I figured it was Bradley Chubb. Yeah.
Okay.
Healthy
so
Chubb?
he has the only healthy Chubb. I don't know why he's asking about that.
I see. Yeah, the question mark is interesting. I don't know if he's actually been injured at all this year. I don't think that's ever been in question that Bradley Chubb is healthy, but
I'm sure it's a I always forget his first name. Is it Nick Chubb?
Yeah, that'd be Nicholas Chubb the second.
Nicholas Chubb the second is so I don't know, Tim. But let's see. Bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off for him here.
Yeah. I did. I'm glad we mentioned the name change. That was a big thing that happened.
It was in my lead, and I didn't lead with it, so that's my fault.
Perfect.
That's my fault. Okay, so let's go through quickly what happens with Tom. Let's talk about his playoff scenarios. If he wins, then he will be the the 3rd seed, correct?
Yes.
If he wins, he's locked himself into the 3rd seed. He cannot be the 1st or the 2nd.
Correct.
Okay. So
he will be playing one of you 2.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Okay. So that's what's at stake for Thomas and really for Tim and I.
Pull up that bracket.
So we will now the bracket's interesting because I don't know how it's decided. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and so we got to be vigilant on that to make sure that we've got the right teams in there. But so let's go through the scenarios. If Thomas loses, how can Thomas be the 4th seed?
That's a good question. If he loses and Dan wins, that's probably the only way, because there's no real way that Thomas and Dan win and they both get to 7 and 6, where Dan jumps to the 3 seed unless, again, he outscores him by a lot. Let me look. Outscores him by about 270, about 270-ish.
That's Sam. Yeah, Sam is.
But it's also Dan because Sam's only 5 behind Dan.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so I did that wrong. I did that wrong too.
So basically, it's not going to happen. Like
that's right.
Sam, Thomas is locked in at 3. So then that basically, did I say that right? Thomas is locked in at. Okay, this is interesting. Why is Dan projected as the 2 seed?
I'm telling you, that's irrelevant. ESPN's projected. It's never been something that's useful because I don't know the algorithm. I don't know.
And it's not based on divisions, I'm assuming. Because, I mean, when you go to our standings right now, Dan is listed as the number 2 team. But I am going to look at our settings here and show that the playoff seeding tiebreaker certainly is total points 4. So I agree. This is useless. I was just making sure because when I go to the standings, it shows that Dan is number 2 team. So let's scrap this. So we are looking almost certainly at a Tim-Tom rematch for round 1 of the playoffs.
Okay.
The only factor there's 2 factors that change that, to recap. Factor 1, Tim and you, I guess you lose.
I lose, Tim wins.
Tim wins.
That's the only scenario, really. Realistic scenario. Yep.
Which could happen.
Unless we both win and he scores 150 more points.
150 points. Yep.
Right.
So that's interesting. So Tim-Tom Brother Bowl rematch for round 1, just like last year.
Yeah. Wow.
How crazy is that?
That's certainly what I want.
And that was the best game I've ever seen in my fantasy life.
Yeah.
Where it came down to the wire and it was less than 1 point win or something like that, right?
Gosh, unbelievable.
Can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up.
And then the biggest variable for you, really, I mean, assuming you win, right, and get the 1 seed, is who do you want to play at 4?
Yeah.
Who are you most afraid of, and who are you least afraid of at 4? I guess we'll get to that in a second. I'll say it's kind of interesting if Tim ends up in this 1 seed, if Jake happens to lose to Garrett. But man, if I'm sitting in Jake's spot, certainly facing a team like me, if I had the most wildest of scenarios happens that I end up in the 4 seed, that would not make me in the slightest afraid. I
don't want Garrett.
Yeah.
Garrett's hot.
Wow.
Garrett's
interesting.
Hot. Garrett's hot.
Yeah. I don't
want Sam.
Yeah.
I don't want Sam. Sam, I think, is the most talented team in that 5-team bunch. Dan, if he gets Justin Jefferson and Devin and Chan is healthy, that's scary. So,
I mean, going down the line, Ned just had a game where he put up 296, and then before that 262, and before that he had a 292. So that's
Ned's
scary.
been I think he beats me in the last 4 weeks.
Right. And then obviously I was just saying before you popped off that obviously in the weirdest of scenarios I make it, I'm probably the least scary. But then you also have to think, like, I have Fields back, I have Jonathan Taylor back. Like, there are weird scenarios here where there's not a good 4th team you want to face.
Yeah. And I think that's fact by it's evident by the fact that everyone's still very much in position to make the playoffs. Every team is good. We don't have a bad team in this league.
Right.
Okay. With that, I must go. So great episode. I hope everyone listens to this. They've got a lot to learn in a lot of different areas of life. We didn't even go through the fungal spectrum fungal.
We were gonna talk. Well, I mean, you brought it up, so in 10 seconds, I'm just gonna recap. Jake and I were talking about rashes,
as we do,
and we talk about Nair and we talk about rashes. And if you've got a rash, if it's dry, you want to keep it moist. If it's moist, you want to dry it out. So if you think it's fungal, try an antifungal. If that doesn't work, it makes it worse, try a steroid, and vice versa. There's a spectrum.
Yeah, simple as that.
Dry and wet. That's it.
Simple as that. Yep. So a lot of information here, educational episode, and we're just now over an hour. So thank you, Keifer, as always. Good luck to everyone. I'm excited to see what happens, and you will hear from us and see us this time next week.
Sounds good. We'll be in the playoffs. Have a good weekend.
More answers. Yeah, you as
well. I hope you win.
Good luck,
maybe.
Keifer. I hope you win just by a little. I don't know.